Hello and welcome to the event Plan Your Career with GC Students. My name is Priyanka Sharma and I am the co-chair for GC Students, and I'll be one of the presenters for today's presentation. I'm talking to you today from the National Capital Region, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, also known as the National Capital Region. I am grateful to have the opportunity to work, live, and play on this land. In turn, wherever you are today, I invite you to reflect on the presence, past, and future of the Indigenous peoples who inhabit the lands we are located on. Okay. So we have a lot of information to share with you today, but before we do, we wanted to go through some of the instructions for today's meeting. It may be best for you to disconnect from your department or agency's network to avoid any poor sound or incoming video quality. The camera and microphones have been disabled. Therefore, if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A function, which should be located at the bottom of your screen. The session is being recorded and should hopefully be posted on the Federal Youth Network's YouTube channel. And we will definitely inform you of the YouTube channel in our thank you message so that you have the link available to you when you are ready to rewatch it or share it with your friends. So we encourage you all to ensure that you are disabled from your VPN if necessary. And for those of you who have any questions, please do use the Q&A function just so that you don't forget your question. We'll address them during the Q&A period.
Okay, thank you, Priyanka. So I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. My name's Alexia Kelly, and I work for the Federal Youth Network as a project officer and comms lead. Thank you, Priyanka and GC students, for inviting me again to speak. It's always an honor to come speak at this event. I love it. I was a student not so long ago, so I'm very passionate, and I wish that this event was around when I was a student because it's so helpful. So I just want to say thank you to everyone coming out because you're doing yourself a huge favor coming today. So kudos to you. So we're just going through some housekeeping, and we just want to let you know that all these resources, everything that we're talking about will be on the GC Students GC Wiki page. So that is a public page, it's kind of like Wikipedia. It'll have everything we're talking about talking about today on there. So you can scan this QR code or just Google it and you'll find it.
Yes, and we do have another session called Start Your Term. If you were unable to join that session, it happened at the beginning of the summer term. I want to say end of June, but beginning of July. And we talk about tips and tricks on how to take advantage of your student contract. And that session has also been posted on the Federal Youth Network's YouTube page. So if you missed the session, please do go watch that. It provided advice on how you can take advantage of your student contract. So for example, just knowing that after 6 months of student employment, where you're working more than 12.5 hours per week and without a break in service, you have access to some benefits such as insurance and pension funds. We also talk about how advantageous it is to be a student in the government of Canada because it gives you the opportunity to be rehired quite easily within different departments. As soon as you've had one student contract, you can use your networking skills to find other opportunities that might be of your interest or within your field of study. So it really allows that movement to be a little bit more flexible once you've joined the government so that you can gain that diverse work experience. We talk about student bridging, which of course we'll talk about today, but really student bridging is talked about more in the sense of how to find those opportunities through networking. We talk about how important networking is from the beginning of your student contract all the way to the end, as well as in the future career that you're going to be, that you'll have or build with the government of Canada. And in today's presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about the HR background of what that really means. And lastly, but not the least, of course, we talk about benefits such as service buyback. So you could potentially use your time as a student to have that be a part of what's allocated to your retirement. So it could be a benefit in that sense as well. So there's just so many benefits. The Start Your Term allows you to kind of see what those benefits are in a little bit more detail. So if you want to go watch that on the YouTube channel, please do. And like Alexa said, all this information is posted on our GC Students Wiki page. So if there are any questions that you have about those types of benefits and who to contact, it's all on our GC Students Wiki page so that you can get more information.
So yeah, fun fact, I don't even know if Priyanka knows this, but I bought back my service when I was a
I
student
did
for
not
the
know
government.
that.
Yeah. So we can get into that at the end of the session, but I'm just going to go through the agenda. So we're going to talk about job groups, like occupational groups and levels, types of employment and processes, pools and inventories, how to find a job on GC Jobs, and additional resources. We'll just end it there with announcements and the best part, the Q&A session. So that's the agenda for today.
Awesome. All right, so before we get into the content, we want to ask you all a quick question, which will help us understand better what we need to explain to all of you. So on a scale of, sorry, the Q&A popped up right on my screen. On a scale of 1 to 5, what is your level of understanding about the topics on planning your career with the Government of Canada? 5 being the highest level of knowledge and 1 being the lowest. And it's okay if you don't have too much knowledge yet. It might be your first term with us with the GC. And this is exactly the place to be to kind of get that information. And so just don't be hesitant to answer 1. I just want to put that out there. It can be okay to put 1 there. And there are some difficult topics that we're going to talk about. I think not things that are commonly spoken about, at least not when I was a student with the government. Things like appointment processes and employment types and groups and levels. Like I had no idea what that meant when I started as a student. So yeah, I see that 76%, 78% of participants answered the questions. And I see that around 49% are kind of in the middle, which is good. That's great. I see some of you do know about the content we will be sharing today. So it's a great refresher. And some of you don't really know what we're going to be talking about. So it's a great kind of beginning, a first step to really understanding how to plan your career. And hopefully the knowledge we give you today will help you make good decisions for the future. So let's get into the content.
Okay, thank you, Priyanka. That was I love these polls. I love these features. I still consider myself like a 2, but I don't know. Every time I learn something new, that's what I love about the government. It's just really the world's your oyster. But I know enough to do this presentation. So let's do the next section. Job groups and levels. So I do want to mention that before I had this job at the Federal Youth Network, I was an HR coordinator in staffing at Infrastructure Canada, but that was about 3 years ago. So I do have just a base knowledge of the HR, and that's all you need to know for now. This is plan your career. This is not figuring out all the government and all the staffing mechanism on one go. That's just impossible. Start baby steps. So I'm going to try to be as concise and clear as possible. So know your occupational group, pardon me. So this is what we say, like your group, your level. I'm going to talk about levels in the next slide, but your group is kind of like your category. So there's PA, AS, EC. These are all kind of like categories where these type of groups do specific tasks. And I didn't know this when I was a student. Like this is just kind of a weird concept. Like private sector doesn't really do that. They have titles like you're a project officer, you're this. You don't have really groups. But in the government, that's how it works. And it's to keep things transparent, organized, and fair. So this link in the slide right here, perfect link. Go in there and start exploring. So you can look at I forget what they're called, the agreements, the collective agreements. Boom, thank you. Look at the correct collective agreements, and it'll show you what each group and category is all about. What are your educational requirements for that group? What are you entitled to in that group? Because they're all different. I didn't know this. So there's still so many groups that I'm still learning about now. And it's also can be department specific. Some like CRA, for example, they have their own groups, occupational groups. I have no idea what they mean. I don't know what they do, but there's some equivalencies. So like they might have a category that's very similar to AS, for example. So just know the popular ones. The ones in the example here are the most common. There's PE, stuff like that. So how do you know about all of them? Click on this link, go on to GC Jobs, see all of the posters and what the little code is. So it'd be like, two letters and then a number. That's your occupational group. You can also ask around. So that's how I learned about new like groups and levels is I would ask people like, what classification are you or occupational group? And they would tell me, I'm like, what is that? Like, what do you do? And that's how you find out because there's a myriad of them. There's so many. So now I'm just going to talk about the level. So what I was talking about earlier, that was like the group. So it's like the letter, the category that you're in for the tasks and skills that job does. And then there's the level. So for example, one would be like entry level, and then you can go up within that same category. So you can go AS1, AS2, AS3, AS4, for example, until like all the way to like, and then your EX. And about in between, so it's not like this for every category or every group, but around 5, 6 manager, 4, 5 supervisor. So it kind of goes like that. And also the salary amount is different for each. It goes up as you go up in the levels. So like I said, to know what levels do what, go on to GC Jobs, look at if an AS5 poster is asking for all these things, that's probably what they do. That's what a level 5 would do. And like we said in the previous slide, ask around. It is the best way. Doing research on the directory, the government directory, electronic directory called GEDS, I don't know, whatever you want to pronounce it. Also a great way to look for all these things. So even if you meet the essential qualifications, as Priyanka will talk about this later on in the presentation, does not mean automatically that you'll qualify for that occupational group and level. She will talk into more detail about this later on in the presentation. All right, now for poll time again. Do you know the occupational group in which you want to start your career? Because right now, I'm assuming you're a student, so you don't have a group or classification or occupational group or level right now. But what are you interested in? Do you have an idea? I was interested in PE, IS, and AS. How about you? So we're just going to give a few moments for this poll. Give a little, you can type in your answer.
Time. Yes. We'll have the answers revealed in a second so that we can talk about it. But it's a good point that you brought up, Alexa. I had no idea what occupational group I wanted to be in. I didn't even know this tool existed. And so eventually, with good networking and mentorship, I learned that I could be in the PE category because I was really in love with human resources and the work that we could do on the corporate side of human resources. And that's kind of where I was able to shift my path from an AS to PE, which is something we can talk about a little later on as well. But it's super interesting. If you're learning now, it'll be really interesting to use the information you gain from that tool that Alexa was talking about to understand based off your education and what you're studying, what occupational groups match your field of study. So I see that we've had 50% of the participants. So maybe we'll give it a few more seconds. Oh, okay. I think the poll's over. I think I can't see the results. So I'm hoping we can unveil those results just so we know.
I can see the results.
Oh, okay, perfect. What do you see, Alexa, on your end?
So I see EC. People are interested in EC. IT. Some people are saying they don't know.
That's okay.
I'm seeing CR, PM.
Awesome.
Ooh, there's some new ones I never even heard of before. That's cool.
Like
PC.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. I don't know what PC is. Oh,
Yeah,
FI, that's another
yeah,
common
FI
one.
is a good one.
CO.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, you would think like there's just so many possibilities of a career with the government just by seeing, like, as students, you already know some occupational groups that I'm sure others have never heard of or that you've never heard of. So it's just really the world is your oyster here. So it's super interesting. Well, thank you all for sharing. Your thoughts and where you hope to be one day, and or if you didn't know. But we're going to talk a little bit about employment types and processes, and I think that this is going to bring a lot of clarity into what it means to be bridged in, what that is, and understanding that a little bit better, and hopefully it helps you make a few decisions for your future career. So we're gonna go here. It's a visual, and then the next slide is gonna be all text. So I'm gonna discuss this visual a little bit, just to give you an image of what it really means to be a student right now. So currently, as a student, you're considered an external GC worker. You're not considered a Government of Canada public servant yet. Being a student has its advantages. It is one of the ways that you can find your way into the government. It is an entrance to the GC. So that's what this graphic kind of shows you. And there are a couple ways that you can enter into the GC. So one of the ways is through a fixed term contract, and another way is through an indeterminate contract. And we'll talk a little bit about the definitions in the next slide. And there are definitely even more benefits once you've become a public servant, once you've become an employee of the government. Like we said, there's so many career opportunities within the government. And once you've become an employee, there are just so many ways that you can move around and gain different experiences, get promotions, work on special projects. It's all opportunity for you to grow. So the government is really providing you an environment where you can grow in your career, where you can think about your next steps. And honestly, if you really want to, you can work up at a pretty fast pace if you work hard and follow the steps, and you're asking the right questions and doing the right things. So this is really just kind of how the mechanism works, of from student to getting your foot in the door to actually being a public servant and having those opportunities to grow. So let's go through a little bit of those definitions. So like I said, there are external government workers, and those are individuals who gain experience within the government through student employment, part-time work, or casual employment. And for all of you, well, for most of you, probably you're within a student employment, and that could mean that you are from the FSWEP program, you are from the co-op program, or you're from the research affiliate program. Those are all programs run by the Public Service Commission, where you went into their platform, or you talked to your school, or you found a research project with a government department or agency, and that's how you're gaining your experience. And that's probably one of the more common audiences that we have in today's presentation. But some of you might also be casual employees, and casual employees are just a short-term contract of 90 days within your department, which usually means that you have to look for another contract somewhere else after 90 days. But again, we'll talk a little bit about the casual piece as well. But those are external employments. Those are you don't have collective agreements. You're working as a worker, and you're gaining the experience so that you can get your foot in the door. To become a public servant, there are two ways to do that. One is to get a determinate contract. It's called, sometimes you'll hear it as a term contract. It means that you have an end date. So sometimes your term contract can be 6 months, sometimes it can be 1 year, but it just is a form of employment within the government. So that's one way. Then there's indeterminate contracts. I know that this is very popular. You want an indeterminate position, and that means that there's no end date to your position. So once you're hired, you won't see an end date on your letter of offer. You will have continuous service until you choose to retire or leave. But that is what indeterminate contract means. I talked about the possibilities within the government. So once you've become a public servant, once you are an employee, the ways that you can grow and develop and find other opportunities to help you excel in your career. Let's just go through some of those terminologies. It's good to know for now, just so that you know that Once you've become an employee, these are the possibilities within your career. So the first thing is a deployment. A deployment means a move at levels. So Alexa talked about the groups and the levels. So let's take AS1 for an example. A deployment would mean that you could go to a different team within your organization or in a different organization at the same level. So if you are an AS1 and you want to gain experience in another team or another department and they have an opportunity available, it's possible for you to move to that team or department as an AS1 to gain various experience. Then there's acting opportunities. As an employee, sometimes if your manager goes on vacation or someone level higher goes on vacation for, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, they might give you an opportunity to act in that position to gain the experience of the level above so that you can add that to your resume and work towards moving up in the levels. It's a great way to gain that supervisory experience, the managerial experience. It's definitely has its values to find acting opportunities. Acting opportunities can go from a couple weeks to a couple months to maybe a year. It's really depending on what the employer is looking for, as well as what you are looking for when you apply for these opportunities. Then we have secondments and assignments. So I'm just going to quickly go back one slide because I want you to understand that an assignment is within your own department. It is an opportunity to work on a special project. Let's just say there's a 1-year project that your department's working on specific to its mandate and you want to be a part of it. So you can go and work on this project within your department for a specified period of time until this project has been completed. That is an assignment. People do this to gain, again, various experiences. If there's something you want to be a part of, you can obviously talk to your manager and get that experience if you'd like to. Then we have something called a secondment. It is the exact same idea of an assignment, but it's an opportunity within other departments. So you can go on secondment just to gain experience in another department on a special project that might be worked on within that department, or just because that department has a special mandate for something. So you can gain experiences through that, through a secondment or an assignment. And of course, lastly, there's promotions, and promotions are when you are given the opportunity to move to the next level in your career. So from an AS1 to an AS2 or an AS2 to an AS3, occasionally you might skip steps. And again, that's based off of how your organization is structured and if those opportunities are available to you. So super interesting to understand these employment types and how they're relevant to you as a student so you know what steps to take next. So now that we've gone through kind of the employment types, I'm going to give you a little quiz, and don't be hesitant to get the wrong answer. It's a little confusing. There's so many different things to take into consideration. But if you have a student contract, are you eligible for an acting? And again, an acting is an opportunity at usually a higher level where you're going to gain a little bit of that experience. So we'll wait for that poll to pop up. I don't know if it did, Alexa. I don't see it on my end. Oh, there we go. I see it on my end now. So again, so I'll just repeat the question. If you have a student contract, are you eligible for an acting? Yes or no? Give it a few seconds for everybody to answer the question.
It's
Wow,
funny
you guys are
because
answering really, really fast.
I know when we first did this presentation together, Priyanka, I think I had to present this poll and I was like legitimately unsure. And I was like, no, is the correct answer. I was confused.
Yeah. No, it is confusing. There's so many things that you hear about. And I think that as you go through this presentation, a lot of the terminology that we're using is something you might have heard within the office yourself. So other employees might be talking about acting opportunities or going on assignment or going on secondment. And, as a student, sometimes it's really difficult to understand what that means. So I see That majority of you have said no, and that is the correct answer. You only get acting opportunities as an employee of the government. You don't get them as a student. As a student, your advantages are to find other opportunities within your department, within other departments, or even within your own team, just to gain those experiences. You have so much space to learn because you're a student and you're kind of figuring out what you want to do with your career. So that's how you can take advantage of that, and still get similar benefits of what an acting could be for an employee. So the answer is no, but don't worry. We'll help guide you to the steps of becoming an employee so that one day maybe you can all have acting opportunities. Okay. So let's move on to appointment processes. And this is where student bridging comes into play. We'll go through briefly around what the other appointment process types are, but we're really specifically going to focus on the external non-advertised process. So again, this is an image, and in the next slide, it's all text, just so that all of you have a visual of what it could look like, and then we'll go through the definitions of what each one means. And a process is what you apply for when you are looking for an opportunity. And so in order to get a determinate or indeterminate contract or employment type is what we want to call it, you'll go through an appointment process. So we're going to look at it like an iceberg. And if we were facing the iceberg, we would be able to see that face. Everyone would be able to see that face. It's above the water. It's clear. Everyone can see it. And we call that an external advertised process. And that means you're going to be able to see it on jobs.gc.ca. Anyone can see it. The general public can see it. You can go log in and you'll be able to see it. So that is a process in which, if you're eligible to apply, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail of where to find that information, but if you're eligible to apply, you can apply for that opportunity. On the other side of the iceberg, the one that's more in the shade, not everyone can see it, but it'll be the internal advertised process. So as a government employee, you'll get access to a tab in jobs.gc.ca that is for internal advertised processes. So that's for individuals who work in the government. As a student, you are a worker, but you do have access to these internal advertised processes because there are sometimes posts up there for students. If you kind of make sure you're looking at the eligibility criteria, it's not necessarily off as often as it would be for employees, but a lot of the time, if you do your research and take a look into it, you might find an opportunity that can be relevant to you within your scenario. So that's kind of the top of the iceberg. Then there's the bottom iceberg, which is the unadvertised job opportunities. So unadvertised job opportunities are word of mouth. There are internal non-advertised processes. Again, those are just for public servants. That might be something that you hear about within your team or within your branch or sector, whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be through word of mouth. And usually it's an internal non-advertised process within departments. So somebody can message you on LinkedIn and say, hey, we're looking for somebody with your skills and we've seen you do your work and so and so and so. We'd like to consider you for this opportunity. And they'll have their process internally and it won't be posted anywhere. And that's how you find out about those opportunities. Student bridging falls into external non-advertised processes. And the reason it's external is because you are not a public servant. You are a GC worker. A non-advertised process, again, means that it is not posted anywhere. You're not going to apply for it necessarily, and you are going to have to hear about it through word of mouth. Sometimes there are inventories for student bridging. That is when a department is looking for students who are about to graduate for particular entry-level positions, and you might be able to add your name into that, but that's not to say that you're applying for those things. So I'll go to the next slide so that we can talk a little bit more about it. So we talked about the advertised positions. Those are posted on jobs.gc.ca. They're external and internal. So as a student, you should be able to see both. If you cannot see both, there's a contact on the GC Jobs website where you can contact them and let them know that you're a student and you're unable to see the internal posts. A lot of the time you have to log in with your work laptop in order to access those internal posts. So that's just a side note there. In terms of the non-advertised, those are through word of mouth. So they're not not normally posted anywhere. You might see them on social media sometimes, but again, that's a little bit more, I think that falls more under the advertised piece because they have to be, there's some rules to be followed in terms of transparency with that. So for all of you who are looking for a student bridging opportunity, the formal terminology for that is an external non-advertised process, which means that you have to find the opportunity through networking. And that could mean that you're talking to your manager about it right away, or you're looking around and making posts on social media platforms such as LinkedIn and Facebook, which we'll talk about in order to advertise that you're looking for that opportunity. And of course, there's the internal non-advertised, which will be more relevant once you're a public servant. But yes, so just again, I want to reiterate that to find a student bridging opportunity, you have to find that through word of mouth. You have to find that through networking, communicating with your manager, and letting them know that you're interested in that opportunity. So if you're at that stage in your career, please start having that conversation with your manager right away and start that networking piece, which we'd be happy to provide tips and tricks for. A big question that we get is, how do I find a job process? So like I said, the external advertised employment processes are posted on jobs.gc.ca. We're going to talk about how to read those processes in later slides. The external non-advertised employment processes, such as like known as student bridging, are through networking. So becoming members of Facebook groups, the informal ones, a lot of the time you can just look for GC/informal Facebook groups and see what's most relevant to you and join those groups. We have a Facebook group as well. LinkedIn is a great opportunity. GC Connects, GC Directory, a career marketplace. There are so many resources that you can use to connect with other people and start that networking journey to find an opportunity. And all this information, if you're hastily taking notes, don't worry about it. We have it on our GC Student Wiki page, and we will be sure to share that link with you so that you are equipped with all the resources to find these job processes. Over to you, Alexa. I think I spoke for a really long time.
No, honestly, that was fantastic, Priyanka. Like, I love this girl. She's the queen of that section. She taught me so much. And those graphics, like chef's kiss, love those. So pools and inventories. This is such a hot topic, and like it can be such a sensitive topic because there's so many rules. And not only that, but like people have gone hurt from pools. And I will just go through what they even are and the difference between an inventory as well, and how this could be, like an advantage to you if you want to go this route. This is just another option that we're showing you. So I'm going to try to keep it simple. A pool. So I'm going to read the definition. Being part of a pool means that a person has successfully demonstrated at all stages of the selection process that demonstrates that they meet this statement of merit criteria. What is a statement of merit criteria? It is a set of elements, including the level of education, work experience, skills, and comfort working in official languages for that specific position. So how it would work, I'm going to explain pool before I go to the next slide. It is not a swimming pool, let me tell you. I wish it was, though. That'd be way more fun. So a pool is like when a department, this is really overgeneralizing, but it is like when a department doesn't have an actual job, like an opening for that position. Let's say it's AS2. They don't actually have that box open right now. But because the hiring process in the government of Canada takes so long, they came up with this idea of, why not I start testing and going through applicants so that when the position does need a person, we can just pull out of this pool without having to go through this whole hiring process all over again. It's a quick hire because we already know that they're qualified for this position. The government of Canada does this because it's cost effective, but also, like I said, it can take up to 18 months to hire someone. That is a long time. That is a long time to keep a box open if someone goes to retirement or leaves or whatever. So they need to get someone qualified in there right away. And that's what pools are for. That said, some pools other departments can pull out of. So let's say Infrastructure Canada is running a pool for AS2. You apply, you have to go through months of like different types of tests. It really depends on the pool, but there can be exams on writing skills. There's going to be an interview. There could be, screening questions. And then at the end, if you qualify, so you made it, like, congratulations, you made it, you're in the pool, nothing happens. You could be sitting there in there for years, but it means that when a manager is looking for an AS2, they will go straight to this pool and they will pick a candidate from that pool. So you're pretty much like heightening your chances of getting picked instead of being picked from the whole general public of Canada. You're getting picked from just a pool. So that was like Sparks Notes version. I don't even know if y'all know Sparks Notes. Anyway, moving on, I digress. Let's go to the next slide. What you need to know. So to find a pool, you have to go to GC Jobs. It is what it is. There's going to be tons of posters there, but you're going to know it's a pool because it will say on the poster. And also the Federal Youth Network and GC students, we have tons of resources and YouTube videos about these specific things where literally presenters will go through what an exact job poster is. So if you're confused about that, please look at the other resources, but you'll see that it's a pool on the job poster. So during the selection process, candidates are assessed to see if they meet the statement of merit criteria. So that's what I was talking about with all the exams and the tests and all that. At the end of the process, 10 candidates may be qualified. They meet the SOMC, but only one position may be available. Yeah, so they will all receive a communication. So they will receive email telling that they are part of a pool and that they might be contacted by a manager. Now, I used to manage pools at Infrastructure Canada. Sometimes it was way more than 10 candidates. Some like pools, there's all sorts of variations. So don't be like scared if there's a pool that you can qualify for EC4 or EC3 and AS2 like all the same time. It's some quite like really wild stuff. But the point is that you are qualified and you can use that. You can leverage the fact that you're qualified to other hiring managers. Instead of waiting in the pool, waiting to be picked from a hiring manager, why not you leverage the fact that you're qualified to someone else? And I think we'll mention that in the next slide. Oh no, it says right here at this slide, actually, why qualify in a pool? Because it's attractive to managers. Like I said, like they don't need to go and see your resume on GC Jobs and pick you out and then try to figure out if you're qualified and go through all of those hoops. They're going to look at this and be like, boom, checked off all the boxes because someone else already did it for 18 months. The whole team of staffing people are qualifying you. So managers love this. Managers adore this. I know that at Federal Youth Network, at our in-person learning days, which we do offer across Canada, so shameless plug, we do have a session about how to leverage pools. So I'm not going to get into that, okay, because we have a whole session on that. That said, managers, it gives you an advantage. How about that? It gives you an advantage in the competitive market. Just going to leave it at that. I don't want to confuse all of y'all. But please do not hesitate to ask questions at the end of the session. It can be confusing. Okay, so inventories. A lot of people get confused about pools and inventories. Pools are something that can take months. You are pretty much applying for a job, but not really. And that sounds weird, but you're getting qualified. You're getting tested. It's like getting a certificate. Think about it that way. Inventory, you're just putting your resume into a pool. Should not be using pool. You're throwing your resume into a bin, into a group. That's it. You're not being qualified. It just shows that you're interested in these levels. So for example, I've applied to many pools, did not qualify. That's okay. You just keep trying. It's something that you need to be in a routine and a habit, and it's okay to be, feel the rejection because it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It just means that maybe you didn't complete this test well enough or something, anything like that. You can contact even the HR coordinators. They will help you navigate that. That said, I've also applied or submitted my resume to inventories and did get managers that contacted me through inventories. But none of this guarantees a job. None of this. Just want to clarify, just because you got pulled into inventory or put into a pool does not mean you're getting a job. These are just things, tools to help you get a job. So I got contacted by a manager from the inventory. They tested me, it didn't work out. But at least I got that one step ahead compared to the general public. So I think I rambled on too much. I do want lots of time for a Q&A, so please ask at the end of the session. I'll pass it on to Priyanka.
That was super clear, and thanks so much for the examples. I think it's just, I mean, good for me to hear that you're not the only ones going through what you're going through. We've been through it, or we're going through it in terms of applying for those opportunities and understanding what it all means. So let's talk about finding a job on jobs.gc.ca. I briefly looked in the Q&A and I saw someone be like, "Oh, it is just such a long process." And we're going to talk about how to make that a little bit easier for you as you go through, that practice of applying for opportunities and knowing how long it takes to actually get those opportunities, sometimes making sure you're managing those expectations when you do apply to those types of opportunities. So we talked about the student recruitment program, so I'm just going to go through these very, very quickly. We know that the Federal Student Work Experience Program, Co-op, and the Research Affiliate Program are all programs that are run by the Public Service Commission. They are the owners of these programs. They do the recruitment piece. They have these platforms. It's them who organizes these recruitment programs for all of you students to apply to. So for those of you who are still students, who might be co-op students, whose terms are coming to an end, or FSWEP students whose terms are coming to an end, as well as research affiliate program students, it's important to continue keeping your name in that FSWEP database. You never know when a manager is looking for a student within your field of study or within your area of interest, where your name might get pulled and you might be approached for an opportunity elsewhere. Again, with a student contract, once you've had one, you can network to find other opportunities as well. So just don't rely on hoping that your name will be pulled. Continue to do other work on the back end of, or on the front end actually, of while, having your name in these inventories, because they are inventories where your names go in and you'll be evaluated at a later time to see if you're eligible for those opportunities. So there's that. There are other specialized recruitment programs and graduate recruitment programs that are posted on the Public Service Commission's website. It is important to keep up to date with those opportunities. Sometimes they have the post-secondary recruitment opportunity, which is there, which is a good way to kind of get your foot in the door. So just keeping an eye out and making sure you're notified about those opportunities on jobs.gc.ca is going to be super beneficial to you. They're not necessarily posted every year. It's only when opportunities are available. So you want to just make sure you're continuously checking those around the time of hiring, which will be near the end of every term. You want to just keep an eye out for that. So I'd start looking for the winter term, probably in October or early November, to see what if they have anything posted or if they have any notifications of what might be coming up. Again, so to find a job on jobs.gc.ca, there are a few different ways that you can look for an opportunity. So like I said, sometimes with an internal advertised appointment process, you might be eligible based off the eligibility criteria. So when you go into jobs.gc.ca, you might already know your group and level, and you might already know the type of employment you're looking for. So if you're looking for a term or an indeterminate, you might have those filters already available to you on the left-hand side of your screen when you log into jobs.gc.ca. You can select those to filter out opportunities in the external and in the internal advertised tabs within the website. That will help you eliminate those opportunities that are not relevant to you, and you don't have to scroll through hundreds of posts to find something relevant to your opportunity. The other piece in order to find these jobs is you can set up filters. You can set up notifications. I have notifications set up for a specific group and level. So for example, a PE5, I want to find all the job opportunities for PE5. So therefore, anytime something gets posted, I get sent an email saying, here's a job opportunity posted for a PE5 level. You can set up those notifications on your end as well. And you can have, I believe, filters saying for students or having specific filters in there so that you don't miss out on opportunities that get posted and can apply to those if eligible. On the job poster itself, there'll be a section that says eligibility criteria or area of selection. And this could mean that maybe within that particular department, they're looking for a specific employment equity member, or they're looking for a specific place of residence, might be really an in-person job that requires you to be in a specific space. Or, it depends on what department or agency is posting the opportunity or the job process. So make sure you check the eligibility criteria to see if you can apply to that opportunity. And we're going to talk about the essential qualifications. I believe that there's a slide going into that. So make sure that you're checking the essential qualifications and assets as well. So read through the poster. We understand that there are so many words on these posters and it might take a little bit of time. But a tip that I can give you all when it comes to doing these posters and understanding what all of these criterias are and the qualifications required and the assets required is really making a checklist for yourself. As you read through, writing down what the eligibility criteria is, writing down what the education requirement is, the language requirement, then the essential qualifications, and then the assets. Having yourself a checklist is going to make your life a lot easier to understand what is required for this opportunity. In order to answer the pre-selection questions, they'll be based off the essential qualifications on the poster, as well as some of the assets. You'll see that most of the time, the essential qualifications are mandatory questions. You have to answer those questions, whereas for the assets, sometimes it's not mandatory. But do your best to see if you can fill out all the questions. It'll make the process a little bit easier. They are not reviewed by AI. They are not reviewed by a computer. They are reviewed by a human being. That means that you need to make sure that you are writing clear, concise responses with lots of detail on what the question is. And therefore, when you're answering these pre-selection questions, you want to make sure that you're using the STAR method. We actually had a tutorial or workshop at the beginning of the summer on how to use the STAR method. We hope to do it sometime in the future as well. But if you missed out on that, the Federal Youth Network has so many resources on how to use the STAR method. So please go visit the YouTube channel, their wiki page to find those resources. The STAR method is really just kind of, again, Sparks Notes. I love that you use that reference, Alexa. It really is, explaining the situation, which stands for the S in STAR, explaining the task, explaining the action, and explaining the results. So for example, you would want to make sure you're giving timelines of when these experiences happened and in detail providing what you did in terms of those actions to fulfill those tasks and what the results were. And a lot of the time, if you can use quantitative data to kind of prove what the success was of the work that you did, that would be beneficial as well. The other tip I'm going to give you is to ensure that you have maybe 2 to 3 examples per question. I like to provide multiple examples over a specific time period to make sure they know that I have experience within that essential qualification that they're looking for, within the asset that they're looking for. And so my checklist really helps me because I can go through every essential qualification and asset and make sure I have strong enough responses to actually apply and have a chance. It's a very competitive place to apply. There's no doubt about that. And so you want to make sure you stand out as a candidate. And that is one way to make sure that you're doing the best you can to stand out. If you're only answering the essential qualifications, that's totally okay. But you want to make sure that those mandatory questions that are there, you have those solid examples. You have a good coverage of why you meet the essential qualification, which will tie into meeting the statement of merit criteria because it's all linked together. So another key piece of information that is good to kind of keep in mind is that pool piece, which means that sometimes you might be applying for an opportunity. And like Alexa said, if there's only one opportunity available, they might already have an intent for the process written in the poster, which means that they might already say that if you do partially qualify or fully qualify for that opportunity, but there was somebody who might have just been the better candidate for that opportunity, you will be put in a pool of somebody who has partially qualified or fully qualified. And sometimes that's written on the poster itself. So just keeping that in mind is super important. A tip to keep track of the pools that you've partially qualified for or fully qualified for is by making a list, kind of maybe an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, because you're only going to get an email. There's no database where you can go in and say, okay, here are the 5 pools that I've qualified for. You need to keep track of that. So as you apply, make sure you have the title of the process, make sure you have the reference number, exactly what department you applied for, when you applied for it, and whether you partially qualified or fully qualified. So that's a really important piece to keep in mind, because not only does it take a long time for individuals to go through these processes to figure out if they've been partially qualified or fully qualified, but you have put in so much effort into getting to that stage, and you do not want to lose that information when it comes time to advocate for yourself and do that networking piece. So as a student, and like I said, the PSC is very, they are responsible for recruitment, jobs.gc.ca, the student programs. They also support the students across the GC. And a couple of programs that they have are the Indigenous Student Employment Opportunity Program, as well as the Employment Opportunity for Students with Disability Program. And basically what these programs do is there for those who self-identify as Indigenous under the Federal Student Work Experience Program, or those who identify as having a disability through the Federal Student Work Experience Program. I believe if you're co-op or a research affiliate program and you've self-identified as Indigenous or a student with disability, you are more than welcome to apply for these programs. They're there to support you. They have events, they have learning opportunities. So just signing up for this program will allow you to get in contact with those mentors and training professionals to help support you in your career. The Public Service Commission has more information on their website about these programs. But in order to be a part of those programs, you have to register. So once you're a student, you'll have a conversation, if you feel comfortable doing so, with your hiring manager or your supervisor, and you will have to complete a form and submit that to the Public Service Commission, and they will add you to a distribution list so that you get all the information you need to be a part of these programs. So if you haven't had that conversation with your hiring manager, supervisor, or potentially even a human resource specialist about these opportunities to kind of learn and grow, please do have that if you're comfortable, and look into these programs to support you. There's so many more that you can look into on our wiki pages, as well as the Public Service Commission's website. Over to you, Alexa.
Perfect. Thank you, Priyanka. So yeah, additional resources. We have slides for this, but I also want to mention my own advice as a resource. Not that you have to listen, but this is from my own experience. First of all, pools do expire. So keep that in mind. I agree completely with what Priyanka said. You worked so hard in that pool and you might not even get picked, but it's not all for naught, because if you copy all your answers and everything into a Google Doc or like somewhere, you could probably reuse that stuff in another competition. So save everything that you're doing, please. I love that Priyanka was saying be organized and document things. Some other advice I want to mention: if your student contract's ending and you're graduating, don't look for a new job or be telling your manager you're interested in a bridging opportunity 2 months before you're about to finish your contract. Please do it so much in advance, like bare minimum 6 months, because it takes so long to bridge someone, like just staffing mechanism wise. So please tell your manager, tell people that you're interested in being bridged. All right, perfect. That was my 2 cents. Let's go into additional resources. Second language evaluation. super important. You unfortunately, as students, cannot have training, language training, but that's okay. You can when you become a public servant. But second language evaluation will be important, like eventually, because every classification or job has that language requirement in that statement of merit criteria, which we had mentioned earlier. So this is kind of just an overview of what a language profile looks like, second language profile looks like, that you will need to know about later on. You can do a self-assessment test. They're awesome. Please do that. Yeah, please keep a copy of your official results because they don't have it, that's for sure. So please advocate for yourself. Keep your own documents. Okay, sorry, next slide. And developing your second language. So another hot topic, is there a glass ceiling if you only speak one language? No, but why not develop your second language? You know, it's the government of Canada. We have 2 official languages. Why not? I personally use, so English is my first language. I personally use the Morel app. Adore it. I love this. You literally watch like TV shows and you learn French. Like it's amazing. So in your free time, please just go on Duolingo or something. I'm not being paid by Duolingo, by the way. I just do love it. So work on your second language, please. Next slide. And continue learning. There are so many resources and they're all free, right? We have podcasts, and it's not just Federal Youth Network. We have so many communities, so many, like we have the Canadian School of Public Service that have tons of courses. Get educated on the government, how to navigate it. You will be fine. And another thing I want to mention is everything comes in practice. You're not going to go through screening questions and a poster and apply for something and get it the first time. I'm telling you right now, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Just quit. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep practicing. You're going to become a pro. You're going to get that job. I believe in you. Oh, sorry. There was one more slide. That's awkward. Anyway, also love this graphic. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's so many ways to get a job in the government. Please pursue every avenue. I've gone so many jobs through networking, which we can talk about at another time. All right, poll time. We're going to ask the exact same question we asked at the beginning, but hopefully you learned a little bit more and you changed your score. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what is your level of understanding about the subjects on planning your career with the government of Canada? 5 being the highest level of understanding. I'm seeing the results come in and I'm so happy to see that the numbers have improved. All of y'all have learned a little bit more. So much wisdom going in and you guys are really starting off, you know, the next steps in the right way, way more than I had when
Oh,
I
yeah.
I got what do you call it, unemployed. Yeah, so that was awful. So the fact that you guys are here, you'll be fine.
This is so awesome. It's so good to see that there was something taken away from this presentation. And for those of you who want to go and visit our website, just to kind of refresh what we've talked about, we have all the information there. Everything we talked about is on our GC Students Wiki. All the resources that we talked about are on the Fin Wiki. There's so many other additional things that we've talked about: Canada School of Public Service, Public Service Commission. Again, don't hesitate, like don't stress out. We've talked about all the resources. We will be giving you the links so that you can refer to them. But we want to make sure that there's enough time for Q&A. And so I'm going to go through this section in 1 minute so that we have a solid 30 minutes of Q&A. We have our GC Students Facebook group. And if you have a second, you can scan the QR code, but don't worry if I move on too fast. We also have a newsletter. It's a great way to kind of stay in touch with what's going on within the GC for students specifically. Sometimes there are other learning opportunities there as well. So it's a good way to kind of stay in touch, whether you stay with us or continue school in the fall and winter term. Here are all our other social media networks as well. Again, all on our wiki page, so don't worry about that. And you can follow us to kind of stay in touch. We will be sending this link to you in a few days, probably next week sometime, to get your feedback on this session. It's really important for us to know if the session was helpful for you, if there was information that was unclear, missing, any additional questions that we might not have answered in terms of helping you plan your career. We want to hear about that so that we can modify our presentation and make sure it is as beneficial as it possibly can be for all of you. So with that being said, we're going to go into the question and answer period. I will actually stop sharing my screen just so that we have all of us on one screen and we can kind of start the conversation. I'm gonna scroll all the way up because there are just so many questions here. And I see one that's super interesting at the very top. So I'm going with most upvotes. So if there's a question that you see that's already been asked, please give it a thumbs up and we'll make sure that comes. So it's gonna go with the question that has the most upvotes. So if your last co-op term is ending with the government and you'd like to be bridged in, but staffing needs are pending a final decision, how often should I keep in touch with my admin manager to see if I can get a full-time position? So if I understand that correctly, there sometimes is maybe not an opportunity right away. And so you're waiting to hear back if there is an opportunity. My recommendation is that if they say that there's going to be one, I'd follow up maybe once a month. But again, at your comfort level and what your relationship is like within your manager and how certain you are that they are looking to hire you in a position. It's really just kind of understanding, engaging the environment that you're in to know how often you should be asking and knowing if they are interested in hiring you for an opportunity. With that being said, there's a saying in the presentation that Alexa said, do not keep all your eggs in one basket. Do not rely on that one opportunity to be your only opportunity. Opportunities come and go. There are many factors that play into getting these opportunities. Therefore, things can change very, very quickly without being in anyone's control. And that means that it's very important to continue that networking piece, continue advocating for yourself on platforms such as Facebook, LinkedIn, sometimes Twitter, Instagram. Those are all places that you can find opportunities potentially. And keeping in touch with your hiring manager is very important as well. If they're interested in your talent and they would like to keep you on the team, following up with them once in a while, maybe once a month is appropriate, once every couple of months is appropriate, depending on what the situation is like, to find out what what opportunities might be there is a good way to kind of stay in touch with that. So that's my answer there. Alexa, do you have any advice on what an individual could do if they're coming to the end of their contract?
I completely agree with everything that you said. I was going to say this exact same thing. Don't put everything in your own basket. I'm going to tell my story and I hope it's useful. I was in the same position and I was so confident my manager was going to bridge me in. And I'm not saying this is going to happen to you, but he was like, yeah, we're going to bridge you in. No worries. So no stress. Put all my eggs in his basket. That's for sure. Guess what? I didn't get it. My student contract ended. I was unemployed after graduation. So that was kind of scary. Managers understand, like, for example, if you're like, hey, I was speaking to a different manager and I kind of have an opportunity here, but I want to work with you instead. Like, is there something we can work out? Managers are understanding. They know that there's other managers that want people. We're all under one employer. So you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings if you're going out and advocating for yourself and looking for other opportunities. So definitely follow up. I would, be hopeful that they actually mean it and they're going to do it, but have a backup plan. So that would be my advice.
I think the next question is for you, Alexa, but I do want to put a disclaimer out there that if you have questions about things like service buyback or your benefits, a compensation advisor is going to be the best to answer your question. We are not the experts in compensation, so we cannot provide that formal guidance, but Alexa can definitely speak to her experience because I can say I did not choose to buy back my time as a student, so I didn't go through the process, so I wouldn't be able to provide any guidance on that.
So actually the pension center, they're so awesome. If you call them every day asking questions, that's fine. They love helping you out and like talking about service buyback. It is unfortunately such a complicated thing. It took me a year. I had to go get a medical exam, physical exam. It was crazy. I had to spend money to buy back my service. It was just a wild process. Um, whether it's worth it is up to you. For me, it just means that like you're adding so when you're a student, you're not paying into your pension. So when you become a public servant, you can like buy back that time. So that pensionable service. Back in the day, it meant that you get to retire earlier. Now you can't do that because there's a minimum of 30 years that you have to work in the public service before you can retire. And you have to be, I think, 60 years old. That's like the minimum age you can before you retire. Um, I did it because my mentors, so we can talk about this later, but I have mentors in the government. They told me, it's so cheap right now because you're going to buy back your service on the salary you're making right now that it doesn't hurt. You're just adding more money to your pension. So you're pretty much helping out your very, very old self. Okay. It's up to you if it's worth it. Please call the pension center for more information. It is a lengthy process with lots of paperwork. We'll put my email in the chat if you have any more questions about my personal story about service buyback. I hope that answer was useful.
That's super useful, Alexa. I wouldn't be able to speak to it. I didn't end up buying back my service because I was too late. And like you said, it goes based off the salary that you're making, and the later you go, the more money you make, and it maybe is not as beneficial. So I chose to opt out of that. But that was very helpful. But please do contact the pension center, like even the client contact center with questions about benefits. They are so super helpful with providing the guidance, and they will help you make the right decision for you and what you're looking for. So please do that. Okay, so there is a question here, and I was anticipating this question. I said it to Alexa before the session started. How are hiring freezes affecting students hoping to join the government after graduating? How long do these hiring freezes usually last? Unfortunately, I couldn't tell you how long they last. It's very difficult to say. It really depends on the economy. There's so many factors into why certain departments might be in certain situations. With that being said, if you go on jobs.gc.ca, you will always see a new job posting, which means that there is not always a hiring freeze everywhere. There's not always going to be an interruption in hiring everywhere in the government. It might be very specific to specific areas. You don't know how long that's going to last. And I was just curious to know, like, when the last job posting was posted. And this is going to be super helpful for all of you students because it is post-secondary recruitment that posted on August 22nd, the closing date was August 22nd. So it's today. So if you haven't applied or haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to go look at it. But it is something that is available to you to continue looking at because there's always something being posted. Specifically, this one post is about administrative assistant in industrial security. I'd encourage you to kind of go and look to see what exactly this opportunity is. But like I said, there are job postings here where the closing date is literally today, which means that they are continuously posting opportunities for individuals to apply for. And like we said, it sometimes takes time to get these opportunities. Therefore, if you're currently and you've just started your student contract, it is a great opportunity to start now. And that doesn't mean applying necessarily to jobs.gc.ca opportunities. It means talking to your supervisor about or manager about opportunities for bridging or opportunities to extend your contract. They won't know that you're interested unless you state that you're interested, and they need to be able to advocate for you as well as much as you're advocating for yourself. So it's very, very important. And this is something we talk about in the Start Your Term. It's important to have a work plan. The work plan helps you set those goals and helps you have a set time to discuss that you want to stay within your team, within that job. And it also gives your manager some time to potentially tell you if they do have that opportunity or if they don't have that opportunity. That way, if you know right away that there is no opportunity after the end of your contract, whether you're graduating or looking for an additional student contract, you can start to do that networking piece, leverage those platforms we've told you to leverage, and find another opportunity. So don't let the buzz around you about all the hiring freeze and budget and everything like that put you down. It is a tough situation for many, and we want to be mindful of that. But there are always opportunities out there.
Yes.
Work does need to get done. The government still needs to run. People
Yeah.
leave. There needs to be some sort of motion in play. And students are a very integral part of the government. You are part of the succession plan. You are going to be our future. And therefore, I'm sure there are people out there looking for someone to fulfill a role or responsibility within your area of interest or your field of study. It just might be a little bit harder to find those opportunities right now. So you just have to do a little bit more digging, and that can feel definitely overwhelming, but don't get discouraged. Just continue trying, and it'll happen. You have one contract, you can leverage that to find another contract, even if there's a few months in between. So, Alexa, do you have anything to add to that?
That was a perfect answer. I just want to add, like, just take whatever you're being offered. You just need to get your foot in the door, and then from there you can pick what you want.
Always.
Get like
Always,
a
always.
term in some occupational group you don't even want. It's fine. Just please, just once you're in,
Anything.
it's easier. So
Yeah.
just whatever's thrown at you. Obviously, the indeterminate's the better option. Might not get thrown at you right at first. I got so many terms until I was indeterminate. No, I swear. So just take those terms, please. Just don't say no. Don't reject. That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Alexa. Is it hard to switch job groups? I'm going to answer that question. It depends on where you want to go. So some job groups are similar to another. For example, an AS to a PE can be similar. There are some differences that you have to look out for. For example, with an AS, you don't necessarily require a degree, whereas for a PE, you do require a degree, and that's a major difference. With that being said, if you're looking to switch job groups, it's important to understand what the requirements are for that group. So the tool that Alexa had shown you earlier on in the presentation is a great way to understand the linkages between different occupational groups, if that's something that you're interested in looking at. There's a lot of similarities in some of those occupational groups. It also depends on the structure your department or agency has within itself. It's different depending on the team you're in, the department you're in. Things are structured differently sometimes, but that's not to say that you can't switch groups. So if for me it was easy. So to answer the question, for me it was easy because I was in the HR field anyway, and the work I was doing was more of a PE classification than it was an AS classification. So they reclassified me into PE because I met the requirements. The only thing that was a little difficult was understanding what level I would fall under based off of the essential qualifications of an AS4 versus a PE2. And they found the match there, and that's how it works out. Some departments have a calculation already put in place. So if you're looking to be reclassified or are given that opportunity to be reclassified, there's already mechanisms a lot of the time put into place. So no, it doesn't have to be difficult, but just making sure you're looking at those essential qualifications, education requirements, and knowing if you meet those things can make the situation a little bit easier in your favor. Cool. Okay. Next question. Based on your past experience, what advice would you offer to students who are set to complete their bachelor degree in the coming months to help them successfully transition into their career to get bridged in? Alexa, I will let you start with that question.
I was gonna say I love storytelling. But times have changed since I was a student. So I was a student up until 2020, so 4 years ago. So times have changed since I was a student. But my advice, I don't want to get canceled for saying this advice. So let's just say we're doing an honest conversation, all of us together. Um, don't be naive. I don't know. Please don't cancel me for saying that. I was like so I was a young person graduating from university. I thought like I was so excited. The world was my oyster. Like, you know, everything was so awesome, and I was excited to get into the career. And I didn't realize that there was like so many there like I didn't wasn't familiar with bureaucracy and stuff like that. Um, and I cared so much about what other people thought about me, which is important. Like, I'm not saying burn bridges, definitely don't do that. Always be professional, but like I said earlier, don't feel like you're hurting your team or your manager by wanting to go somewhere else or try new things.
Mhm.
So my advice is fight for yourself. Be like, I am worth it. I am good for this job. I can compete with that person. Start early. The minute your student contract starts, looking for your other opportunity right away. Um, whether that be casual, whether that be term, just anything, seriously, just try to grab everything. Because if you don't do it, someone else will. Be hungry. You know, I coach soccer and I always tell them, like, be hungry to score a goal. Because if you're not, they're gonna be hungrier than you and they're gonna win. And I didn't know that. I don't like competition. I want to be friends with everyone. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And you're not hurting anyone. Things are meant to be. Um, I mean, I could go on about this forever. So I'm gonna finish with one point, then I'll let Priyanka add hers. Yeah, advocate for yourself and try all the avenues. Like, I didn't want to apply to posters because I was like, I'm not doing all this work.
Yes.
But there's ways around it though. Be like, little smart. I would go to the bottom of the poster and email those folks. And I would be like, hey, I don't have a background in this, but I'm really interested and passionate. Do you have any advice for me? Like, they're really open to helping you, these staffing people and the managers. Like, nobody's out there to hurt you or reject you on purpose. Get a mentor. Just, you're gonna need to want it and you'll get
Yeah.
it. Trust me.
Yeah. And I think I really resonate with what you say, Alexa, because it's so important to advocate for yourself. You're your biggest advocate. You're the only one who cares about where your career is going to go. You're going to have supportive managers, you're going to have supportive mentors, but if you aren't fighting for what you want, they're not going to fight for you. So you have to show them that that's what you want. And that comes back to making sure you start those conversations very early on. Be cognizant of the environment you're in. If it's really wishy-washy and they're like, oh, well, we might have a position, we might not have a position, that is your cue that, okay, I need to not put all my eggs in one basket. I need to start looking at other opportunities, showing that I care about finding an opportunity elsewhere if they don't have one for you. And no one's going to be hurt about that. We all work for the same employer, so at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's on you to figure out what avenues you would like to go into. And I think that it leads into the next question really well, Alexa, because you said sometimes you email those HR advisors at the bottom of a poster, and that's a good way to get information. Someone here has asked, do you have any tips for cold emails to directors, managers, or reaching out to previous supervisors we haven't talked to in a while to ask them about job opportunities? I do want to speak to this because it's super interesting. It's an interesting topic for me. It's something that I've received in the past, and it depends on how you are going about this cold email. You really need to have an intentful message, in my opinion. I'm the type of person that if you send me your resume with no content in it, I will not look at it. And that being said, it's because a lot of the time these managers and directors and previous supervisors can't hire you on the spot, and there has to be a process and there has to be some transparency. And so sometimes you might get lucky and they might forward your resume to somebody else and be like, oh, somebody sent me their resume, add it to your inventory or database or whatever it might be. But the only time I feel inclined to read an email that is about an opportunity is when there is intent to the message, when I resonate with the message, when I know what you're looking for, and it's not just a simple, hey, get me a job. It is more of a, can you provide some tips and tricks? Is there any guidance? And if you are aware of any opportunities, please let me know. We are not here to hand you jobs. We can't do that, unfortunately. And so with that being said, um, if you are comfortable with sending emails to directors and being mindful of directors and managers already having very, very full inboxes, if that is something you would like to do, curate a message that will grab their attention, that will ask them valuable questions that's worth their time to answer for you as well. And make sure that you have an intention when you're sending those messages, and that, it's not just that, hey, I'm looking for a job, here's my resume, and leave it at that. A lot of the time, it's just going to get ignored. So in terms of contacting a past supervisor, you've built somewhat of a relationship with this person already. Therefore, I think that there should be no hesitation just to reach out to be like, hey, I'm looking to see if potentially there might be another opportunity for me to work with your team. You want to make sure that relationship is already a little bit there before you start asking for opportunities. And a previous supervisor is a good way to know that you've already established some sort of a connection with them previously. So it shouldn't be too difficult to reach out to someone like that. So that's my advice there, is just be intentful with your messaging. Alexa, did you have anything to add on that?
That's awesome. Yeah, just think about if you were a hiring manager, would you hire this person if they just sent you a resume with nothing else? No, you're like, you want someone that's going to be like taking initiative and that, like, really creates a spark. You want to build a good team. So think about like that, a hiring manager. Also, advice, because I made mistakes in my past and I don't want you to make the same mistakes. Always be professional, please. Your reputation matters. I know that back in the day, I would like impulsively do something and I got in trouble by my manager. And it's because when you're getting emotional and you're frustrated and you're upset. And when I was an HR coordinator, people would also send me mean emails. Please take, like, what, nobody's gonna hire you, if you're gonna be like that. So take a step back, breathe in, even if you don't mean it, just be professional and nice in your email. It's okay, because that's how like the corporate world works. I didn't know that. But I learned from it. So always be professional.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, there was one more point that I want to make, is that sometimes this is my strategy, doesn't mean you have to do it. I'll go on to GC Connects Marketplace. I know it was mentioned in the PowerPoint. It's one of it's like government Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But there's some careers that get, or some jobs that get posted. What I would do is I would email the manager that posted or direct message them and just ask them like, hey, I'm interested, I'm passionate, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're not asking for a job, they find that interesting. And none of them really became a job, but like, it's a way of networking. My last advice, it's a full-time job, applying for jobs, going after managers and like having a very mature conversation that takes up so much energy. Time manage, go to a cafe, drink some coffee, put your headphones in and just do everything like in one go, and then do another time slot for next week. It's a full-time job. You need to time manage applying for jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice. There's another question here. If you know your role/level, is there a way to know what level you'd be in other roles, or do you always start at level 1? No, you do not always start at level 1. It has to do with what the essential qualifications are for each level. So like Alexa mentioned, a lot of the time there's a standard kind of essential qualification or asset per group per level. And so when you go on jobs.gc.ca, you'll see that there's some similarities in each job poster. That being said, in order to identify what level you will be at, that checklist method is very, very useful. So sometimes as a student, you don't know what level you qualify for. There needs to be justification as to why you're going to become a certain level. You need to meet the statement of merit criteria, which means that you need great examples for the essential qualifications that they're looking for and potentially some assets that they're looking for. So do your own research and kind of go through the posters and write in a Word document where you can save it to show for yourself within under every essential qualification and within the assets what examples you can give. That will give you a good idea of where you fall. If you don't meet one of the 3 essential qualifications, a lot of the time, they're just going to stop looking at it if you don't even meet one. They're not even going to continue reading your application. And that is a very common practice. There are so many people who apply. And the reason they ask these screening questions is because they want you to meet those essential qualifications before they go to evaluate you further. So if you in your own gut and in the responses that you're giving don't have examples for something, you know that maybe this is not the level for me, and then start working backwards, or you work forwards and start, from level 1 to 2 to 3, so on and so forth. So just making sure you meet those merit criteria and what's written on the poster is a great way to understand what level you fall under and to fight for what you should be getting once you want to get a bridging opportunity, and have those justifications in your back pocket to make sure that when you're having those conversations, it is with research and intent that you know that this is what is required, therefore this is how I meet it. And that's how you advocate for yourself and prepare yourself for those conversations. Which leads into the next question, because I'm being mindful of the time. It's 2:56. So we'll have like maybe 2 to 3 more minutes of questioning. There's a question that says, do you recommend preparing in a particular way before talking to your manager about an extension or bridging? And that is one of the ways that I think could be very beneficial to prepare yourself to have that conversation. When you know what your career goals are, when you know what you're looking for, it's important to voice that and have that written down in your work plan so that when you do talk about this with your manager, you're able to clearly state, these are the steps in my career that I want to achieve. Here's how I want to do it. Can you support that? And sometimes they can by extending your contract or potentially providing you a bridging opportunity. And sometimes they won't be able to necessarily do that for you, but they might be able to guide you into a team that can do that for you or provide you with contacts who can support you with that. With that being said, with an extension in contract, focusing on the skill set that you'd like to build and the work that you are doing is a great way to start that conversation, to say that you'd like to continue that in the fall term if that's an opportunity that they can give you. In terms of student bridging, Alexa already said that it is a very, very long process. You want to have that conversation as soon as possible. Make sure they know that you're interested, and that's where the knowledge of knowing what level and group that you fall under can be very beneficial when you're talking to your manager. So just doing that research on your end to make sure you know what you're talking about when you're asking for something can go a very, very long way. Do you always have to do an interview to get a promotion? It depends on how they're choosing to evaluate the candidates. It could sometimes be through an external advertised process, an internal advertised process, maybe a non-advertised process. It is really truly up to the hiring manager and the staffing advisors on how they want to evaluate somebody for a promotion, and how they want to, whether it's through an interview, a written test, any sort of evaluation that they want to do. So it's hard to say if every single time you get a promotion, you will have to do an interview. It can be various ways that they determine your capabilities for a promotion. At the end of the day, in order to meet the requirement of a promotion, it is the same way you would do so and justify for any other opportunity. There has to be justification in you meeting the essential qualifications of that and the merit criteria of that position. All right. There's so many questions here. For those of us, I think this is going to be the last one, unfortunately, because we are running out of time, but we'll do our best to provide you answers for what is left in the chat, but we'll go ahead and do this last one. For those of us that have over a year left of school post-co-op term, will the impact with post co-op term, will that impact our ability to get rehired, especially if there are different government in power? I believe what I understand from this question is basically, can you still be bridged in or hired as a student? In terms of being hired as a student, if you're still a full-time student and meet the eligibility criteria of the student programs through the PSC, whether you apply a couple months after doing school or a year after doing school, once you've had one student contract, and if you still meet the eligibility criteria, you can still use the FSWEP platform, co-op, or the research affiliate program. You can network. Those are all ways to stay in the government as a student. In terms of student bridging, it depends on the department on whether or not they still consider your experience recent enough. I always tell students, they always say, is there a timeline in which I can get bridged in? Technically, no, there's no timeline, but you have to be kind of mindful of what that means. The reason you get bridged in or an external non-advertised opportunity from being a student to an employee is because the student experience you gained is still relevant to what you have learned, to incorporate that into your job. If you are coming back 10 years down the line, things might have changed, so the opportunities might look a little different, and therefore it has to be considered on your end. So in my opinion, a year and a half of doing school between your co-op term and looking for an opportunity is not a long time. I think that it's very reasonable. A lot of students go back to school, and that's just how it goes. It's the experience students have. You work for the summer or co-op term and you go and complete your education, and then you look for an opportunity. So in my advice there would be to continue to stay in touch with your current hiring manager if they are looking to keep you on within a year and a half, or to just continue applying to opportunities as they come, just so that once you've completed your school, you have done your due diligence to do the work that you need to do to find an opportunity. So not necessarily a timeline, but I'd be mindful of how much time you're keeping between your experience in the government as a student to when you want to apply for an employment opportunity. Alexa, is there anything that you'd like to add for that question?
No, but there is something I want to add. Complete
Okay, go ahead.
forgot to mention, when you're applying for jobs in the government, it's a skill. And when you see keywords in the job poster, try putting those keywords in your answer, in your star
Yes.
answer, and in your resume. When I was
Mhm.
HR coordinator, I would just control F looking for those keywords. So
Yeah.
that is a tip for y'all's that I want to leave.
Yes. I think that's a great tip, Alexa. And those are the types of things, like, we don't necessarily talk about those in our presentation, but those are the types of tips that we'd want in our feedback form, just to see if you need more information on that. If there's a way that we can provide those resources to you, potentially do a workshop or something like that, we want to hear from you. We will end our session today, given that we are already 2 minutes over time, but we really appreciate all the time that all of you have spent with us in this presentation. We hope that you've learned something. We hope that we've been able to provide you with the guidance that you're looking for. We look forward to hearing your feedback, and we can't wait to see you all next time. Please stay in touch with us through our social media, through our Facebook page, through the newsletter. We'll do our best to answer your questions and support you throughout your journey. We wish you all the best in everything that comes your way, and we can't wait to see what the future brings for all of you. So thank you so much, and take care. We'll see you all next time.